Hi everyone. Yeah, welcome back. Good to see you again. You're looking well. Get yourself a drink and a seat up front. We're going to get started. Because, yes, there's a show. It's all been happening and now you want to know. But before we can start, we must begin with hello. My name is Sean, your host and fellow. Now grab hold your beverage, your mind just as quick. We're building up for our best sip. So join me now for the greatest pleasure where we unwind this world together. It's time now. It's time for the sip. Let's do it now. Let's do it quick. Go! Yes, delicious. Well, in Melbourne, Australia, a man hides his lottery win from friends, accidentally creates a conspiracy theory about himself. A local man who won a substantial lottery prize reportedly spent months attempting to keep the news secret, only to trigger increasingly elaborate rumours among friends, co-workers and neighbours. According to people familiar with the situation, the man initially had no intention of changing his lifestyle dramatically. His plan was simple: tell nobody, continue working, and avoid attracting attention. The strategy began to fail almost immediately. Friends noticed that he suddenly stopped worrying about minor expenses, took unexpected vacations, replaced an aging car, and seemed unusually relaxed about discussions about bills. When asked directly if he had won the lottery, he reportedly denied it. That turned out to be a mistake. Instead of accepting the explanation, people began inventing alternatives. Co-workers speculated that he was secretly starting a company, involved in cryptocurrency, working for intelligence services, or preparing to move overseas. One colleague reportedly became convinced he was an undercover government investigator. The rumours intensified after the man purchased a new coffee machine for the office. He just showed up with it one day, said a co-worker. Nobody spends that much on coffee unless something is happening. Attempts to appear normal only made matters worse. According to friends, the man continued clipping coupons, argued over small restaurant bills, and occasionally complained about fuel prices. Rather than reducing suspicion, observers interpreted this behaviour as evidence of someone trying too hard to appear ordinary. At one point, a group of acquaintances reportedly created a private messaging thread dedicated to theories about his finances. The leading explanations included organised crime, a secret inheritance, a television game show, and hidden ownership of several parking garages. The truth finally emerged after or during a social gathering when somebody jokingly presented a slideshow titled, "Where is he getting his money?" The presentation reportedly contained timelines, photographs, spending estimates, and a chart connecting unrelated events. Faced with what one attendee described as a criminal investigation powered entirely by boredom, the man admitted that he had simply won the lottery months earlier. Witnesses say the room fell silent. One attendee reportedly responded, "Honestly, that was not even in the top 5 theories." Friends later expressed disappointment that the explanation was so mundane. The man continued to enjoy his winnings, and the conspiracy group, however, reportedly remains active and now focuses on determining who keeps stealing lunches from the office refrigerator. Meanwhile, over in the UK, Keir Starmer has banned social media for kids under 16. This is from Ground News. Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced a blanket ban on social media for children under the age of 16, introducing what he called was an Australia Plus model for sweeping digital restrictions. The hardline policy targets major global platforms including TikTok, Instagram, X, Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, Reddit and Threads, which will be entirely legally prohibited from offering services to young teenagers. The restrictions extend far beyond standard social media apps, implementing a total ban on under-18s accessing sexual or romantic AR chatbots and stripping stranger chat features from multiplayer online gaming platforms. New curfews will target older teenagers up to the age of 18, integrating technical feature blocks designed to entirely prevent late-night infinite scrolling and restrict late-night platform access. The landmark regulations are expected to hit the Parliament before Christmas, utilising immediate fast-track powers under the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Act to bring the first wave of enforcement rules into active effect by spring 2027. So, this seems a bit strange. Intentions are always noble. Think about the children after all. But I think most people know, though, that this is the Trojan horse. You start with the kids, and now you have a way to control the content. Oh, well, we can use it for that, and we can use it for that. But is this really the best way to train kids for their future challenges? Teaching them how to navigate difficult conversations? I mean, what are the kids going to do? Well, are they going to sit back and just not engage or be engaged with the modern world? No, they'll probably go for street cred. At least one person in their school will probably just make their own platform. It's not crazy difficult to make a basic application that would allow the whole school to have their own social media. Doing it on a scale of X or threads won't happen, but a few hundred people is manageable on one computer. But especially if you're not concerned for things like security and backups. There are countless videos on YouTube showing you how to make a Twitter clone from scratch. Text and images won't be an issue. Even short video clips would be manageable. And there are plenty of off-the-shelf media platforms. You could even ask AI to make you one. Then what are you going to do? Block access to AI next and really put the kids behind? Then how are you going to police these thousands of new sites? I mean, how would you even know about them? Do you think the kids are going to tell you? Those sites wouldn't have any monitoring on them, no tools to prevent harm. The kids will just be happy that they can share photos and messages without grown-ups getting in the way. It would be the Wild West. It's all about the children, nothing to do about introducing tools for authoritarian censorship so you can stay in power. This is all being brought in under the guise of saving the children, and that's a very common trope. In fact, laws already exist to save the children. You can't groom kids. You're not allowed to distribute that kind of material already. Those rules are just not being enforced. In fact, even speaking out about it is treated with contempt by the government. Rupert Lowe, the leader of the Restore Britain Party, has said that he's going to rescind any of these laws that get put in place. But he's also had to set up his own inquiry into the grooming gangs because the government has failed at all levels to even attempt to deal with the problem. The scale of the issues he's finding is truly mind-boggling. Some of the stories are extremely distressing. But the politicians do nothing. It's not enforced. It's pretty clear that the children these politicians are trying to save is themselves. That leads on to other ways that these restrictions we spoke about last week could be used. There were a number of videos recently about police brutality. One where a guy was thrown into a bollard and cracked his head and ended up in hospital. Another where a man was handcuffed on the ground and where they were punching him in the head. And this is on top of the ones we spoke about last week. And another where they were manhandling a 5-year-old kid, while they're pepper spraying his father. There was another video from last year that surfaced where a kid had actually impaled his face on the fences, on some garden fences by officers. And do you think that they wouldn't start banning those kind of videos? What will the excuse be for public safety? I mean, how would you even find out about someone, getting punched in the head while handcuffed and lying on the ground if you were not allowed to see it? How would you even know about an anti-government rally if all the advertisements and comms about it was being suppressed? And those things are not, those things you're not allowed to complain about. Well, you really won't be able to complain about these things now. And even if you did, no one would find out. Some people may say it's okay, it's good to have these things, ban these things for kids, but until you find out that only some social media companies or there's some social media companies that'll still be allowed to operate, it's not a blanket ban. It's only a ban of the companies that they don't like, the ones who are showing how bad the UK government currently is. Blue Sky will not be allowed to operate, or Blue Sky will still be allowed to operate with no restrictions. Blue Sky is a well-known left-leaning and very favourable of the government policies social media company. So the government doesn't mind the pro-left social media companies, it's just the ones that people are using to highlight the problems. They don't want those young impressionable voters to get the wrong idea. And this is where the majority of their new support comes from, after all. Especially now that they've given the kids the right to vote at 16. So you're old enough to vote, but you're not old enough to talk about it. It's just crazy. And they can even drink alcohol, but they can't even talk about it. They can also drive, but they can't talk about it. And they can even own a gun, but they can't talk about it. You can do all these things at 16, but if you wanted to say something to your friends, share a photo of how happy you are that you passed your exam or made the sports team, no, you can't do that. It is total nonsense. Staying in the UK, and also from Ground News, UK house prices suffer the biggest June drop in 14 years, says Rightmove. Britain's average asking price for a home fell 0.6% in June, which was quite a lot for a single month, a £2,000 reduction, bringing prices to about £370,000, marking the most significant decline for this month in 14 years, according to Rightmove. Now, Rightmove are the biggest property websites in the UK. They put property advertisements in there, and they do analytics and things like that as well. Property expert Colleen Babcock of Rightmove said, "It's unusual to see a price fall of this size in June," citing economic uncertainty, the Maybank holiday, which happens every May, an unreasonably warm heatwave, and the World Cup as contributing factors. An unseasonably warm heatwave, even though there's been one for several years now, every June. Higher mortgage rates are squeezing household budgets, while increasing inventory encourages buyers to delay decisions, Babcock noted. Sellers must set competitive prices to attract interest as buyers deliberate longer. So yes, as the headline says, traditionally June is when house prices are at their peak. It tends to be much more subdued over the Christmas period. So you can actually see like a bell curve, rising through summer. And it's not good considering rates are at the lowest level in 2 years. The base rate is currently sitting at 3.75%. Speculation is that the rates will remain the same, even though the ECB has recently hiked rates for Europe. So yeah, that's kind of unusual. The property is a massive part of the UK economy. Everybody is, it's a big business, and for it to drop like this at this time, it shows that there's a lack of confidence out there. Still on property, and also from Ground News, new rule to ban underfloor heating, gas fires and towel rails, is a report. Regulations from the Department of Energy, Security and Net Zero limit underfloor heating and towel rails to 6 hours daily operation, requiring temperature and power saving controls to improve home energy efficiency. According to Telegraph, the rules will ban around half the current underfloor heating systems and towel rail systems, plus between 17% and 27% of gas heaters. More than a third of space heating systems would become illegal to sell. Shadow Energy Secretary Claire Coutinho criticised the move, stating, "Ed Miliband wants to tell you how long you can keep a towel rail switched on, and this follows a tumble dryer ban effective from January 19th, 2027. So yeah, you're going to be able to dry your clothes next year. The government clarified that restrictions apply only to new sales, not existing heaters, stating these reforms will save households money by improving energy efficiency for devices. By not being able to use them. Great Britain is implementing these standards following similar restrictions already introduced across the EU, continuing the transition towards net zero by setting high-performance requirements for heating devices sold as new. Yeah, the great net zero scam continues. Weirdly, if you are generating your own power through solar, for example, that is still not exempt. Maybe doing all the right things you're supposed to by investing a lot of money and putting renewables in and going off grid, generating your own energy, you still will not be allowed to use it. It'll be limited to 6 hour window. So if you decide, so you have to decide if you're going to be cold in the morning, afternoon or night. Most people will probably think that they'll split that, maybe 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours at night, or maybe 2 and 2. Only problem is that most systems take an hour to really warm up enough to have any effect. So you may only get like 5 hours or maybe 2 hours or maybe even 1 hour 3 times a day. The nanny state is at it again. And you may be wondering why the government needs to impose these things on me. Where is my freedom of choice? I mean, if I'm happy paying the bill, then why can't I have the heating on? And one reason might be capacity. The UK imports about 10% of its electricity at the moment. That varies depending on supply and demand, but that's been as high as 19% in some months. So nearly a fifth of their energy they need to get from elsewhere. Lucky they can actually get that. What if those guys need it? Imports have risen in recent years due to the declining North Sea gas, nuclear outages because of aging infrastructure, and variable renewables, which everybody knows are unreliable. Peak usage is about 60 gigawatts, usually over summer, that's winter, when it's cold. But that is expected to double in less than 10 years. At the moment, there is not enough under construction to meet that demand. Total construction under construction at the moment is only about 15 gigawatts, which means that there'll only be another 25% available in 10 years' time, because it takes quite a long time to get these things built. There will actually be considerably less because what is mostly being constructed is sort of renewable power, and they only quote peak power ratings, assuming that the sun is going to be shining perfectly all day, every day, and that the wind is going to be blowing at just the right speed all the time. Actual power delivery will probably be more like 8 gigawatts, so let's call it 10 just for the mass. And that means that currently they will only be able to meet 16% of the additional demand in 10 years. Now, you might point out that all these projects have been approved and say, there's plenty of planned capacity in the works. But what they don't tell you is that in the last 10 years, the majority of planned projects never made it to construction. It just sat in the planning phase. People looking to make some money do all the paperwork to get these projects through to the planning stage on paper. But when they go looking for the money to make it happen, funnily enough, most of them never find it. You're talking hundreds of millions of pounds for these things to be made. Not everybody just will, be able to invest that on a project that they know little about. Why the UK insists on putting solar, I have no idea. It's hardly the most sun-rich country in the world. Wind can run at night, but they're actually incredibly expensive to build and maintain, those wind turbines. I can accept wind a little bit more because the UK is a windy place, lots of bluster. This is all made worse by the fact that the UK does not drill for its own gas, even though it's surrounded by gas reserves. Existing reserves are starting to become depleted, but the UK banned all new drilling, so it's not even possible to go find new ones. Instead of building reliable baseload power like gas and nuclear, they're pushing for the net zero nonsense, and to cover the expected shortfall, they're taking your choice and freedoms away now to compensate for bad policies. That's before we even get into the question of who actually makes the money from net zero. But that's probably a discussion for another day. And that kind of brings me to the end of my notes, actually. And that just leaves me with one for my final thought, and that is there's the old adage of boiling the frog. That is where they turn up the temperature so slowly that the frog doesn't notice until it's too late. Look around at who's trying to restrict you and take things from you, because it may not be for your own good, even if when they insist it is. You can learn to see what's happening and maybe help others out the pan too. And with that, I wish you well and say see you later. Cheers.